Bitcoin may be about to enter the euphoria phase, and I would buy it before it does. If you don't, you're going to put both of us in the awkward position of you wanting to buy more Bitcoin in the smack middle of euphoria, and me telling you that there's never a bad time to buy Bitcoin, but it would have been great if you didn't wait for the euphoria phase. So it does not feel like we are in the euphoria phase yet. Typically, the rule with euphoria is when you're in it, you know it because nobody's asking. When you're actually in the euphoria phase, nobody is asking, are we in the euphoria phase? Because it's clear that you feel euphoric and it's great. Um, so I don't think we're near a top in the cycle for Bitcoin, but we're getting close to the time every 4 years when Bitcoin goes through a temporary euphoria phase before it continues, before it typically goes through a price correction and then marches back up again. So why do assets go through a euphoria phase? The answer is because high performing assets, once they have been high performing long enough, people start to believe that they will be high performing forever. As a result of it, people start to borrow money and pay the asset with borrowed money. And this happens 100% of the time with a high performing asset. They will always go through these ups and downs on the way up because that is human psychology. Let me give you an example. Let's assume there's a hypothetical asset that goes up in value 1% per week. That's a 52% return per year, which is obviously way better than, say, the cost to borrow 6%, 7%, 8%, or 9% on a home equity line of credit or something like that. So as soon as something goes up 1% a week for long enough, people are going to start thinking, ooh, I should buy that with borrowed money. Then I'll pay 8% on borrowing the money. I'll get a 52% return. What could go wrong? Well, this inevitably happens after a period of time with any high performing asset. It's like a 100% correlation that if enough time passes, that buying that asset with borrowed money, and soon more money is chasing the asset than is sustainable based on market demand. Based on actually market, I shouldn't say demand, because obviously it's always supply and demand. What I mean is based on market adoption. So there ends up being more demand for the asset in addition to the adoption of the asset, which means the price of the asset gets ahead of the realistic sustainable price level based on the adoption of the asset. This happened in 2011, 2013, 2017, and 2021. 2011 was sort of an early anomaly, so normally people talk about it as the Bitcoin 4 year cycle, and it's always the year after the presidential election. It's usually the second half of the year after a presidential election. Bitcoin tends to go through a period of euphoria. And that has lined up again with presidential elections in 2012, 2016, and 2020. The year after that has been the sort of year, the second half of the year after has been the year of euphoria for at least part of that year. So again, that would be 2013, 2017, 2021, and bingo, 2025, which is where we are. So Bitcoin is within a couple, 1 or 2 percentage points of the highest it's ever been in history, but it does not yet feel like we've gone through the euphoria phase. So what happens in the euphoria phase? Well, what happens in the euphoria phase is people start looking back at the last, from let's say all of 23, all of 24, and half of 25. They look back at the last 2.5 years and they're like, wait, it more than doubled in 23, then it more than doubled in 24, and we're on track for Bitcoin to more than double in 25. Like that's a lot of return. 100%, 100%, 100%. I mean, that results in an asset being worth more than 8 times what it started at the beginning of 2023. So Bitcoin started 2023 around 16,000 per coin. It was above 32,000 by the end of '04. It got above, yeah, by the end of 2023 is what I meant to say. Then it got above, call it double that, 64,000 ish by the end of 2024. And we're on track to have it above 128 by easily because we could be days away from 128. Heck, we could hit 128 today. It's not impossible. I mean, we're at 121, 122. It would take not much of a bounce to go to 128. And there we've doubled the, at least the average price in 2024, if not the end of year price, we would have averaged the price it was for most of 2024. So anyway, you're looking at 8 times your money from the beginning of 2023 to the end of 2025 in 3 years. People are going to look at that and they're going to say, wow, that's a lot of return. And again, people are going to start borrowing money. People are going to start thinking that Bitcoin goes up forever, that 100% return is sustainable, which is not. No asset can double forever. Um, and they start using borrowed money. So what does that mean for you? Well, first of all, what it means is if you are planning to buy more Bitcoin, it feels like, again, I could be completely wrong on this. This is not financial advice, not legal advice, not accounting advice, not tax advice, not investment advice, not any sort of advice. This is just one person's random opinion. It feels like, and which is validated by the research by James Check, the one and only Bitcoin analyst that's really, really worth following. There's some other good macro analysts like Lynn Alden and others, but James Check is in a complete league of his own. And all of the indicators would indicate that where we are right now with Bitcoin is not at a cycle top. So none of the indicators would indicate that we are peaking right now and about to go through a brutal bear market, which is what typically happens after a period of euphoria. And I'll talk about what that looks like in a minute or two here when I get to it. Um, so according to James Check and everybody else, most people would say, yes, now is a good time to buy Bitcoin. But pretty quick here, we're going to kick into the euphoria zone. The problem with the euphoria zone is that's when everybody wants to buy Bitcoin. Because if you haven't done the work to study Bitcoin, one second, if you haven't done the work to study Bitcoin and build your uh, coin, then what you are doing instead is you are buying based on how you feel. And buying based on how you feel instead of intellectual hard work tends to result in people buying things and selling things at the wrong time. So they tend to buy assets in the euphoria phase and then sell them at the bottom of a bear, brutal down market because they feel awful. They feel awful when their assets are down, so they sell them when they're down, and they feel amazing when their assets are up, so they buy way more of it when it's way up, which is obviously the opposite of what you're supposed to do in investing, which is buy things when they're on sale. And in this case, with Bitcoin, your goal is not to sell it, but your goal is not to be buying it at the most expensive price conceivable. So what's likely to play out between now and the end of the year is Bitcoin will likely very rapidly in the next month or two here catapult from 120,000 to 150,000, which point the whole world will wake up and everybody will be calling me saying, hey, I told you I had already bought all the Bitcoin I was planning to buy. I think I want to buy a bunch more. Now that puts me and you in an awkward position because I'm never going to tell you it's a bad time to buy Bitcoin because if you wait long enough, it's always a good time to buy Bitcoin. But what I will be thinking is, why didn't you buy it at 120 or 122 instead of 150? Because at some point we will hit a cycle top. Now, currently, James Check would say he doesn't know where that is. Maybe it's 150. Maybe it's actually, I think that's probably lower than he would say. Let's call it, the lowest end of the band where we could hit a top is, again, this is purely speculative, maybe 160 to 180. The upper end of where we would hit a top is maybe 230, call it 220 to 240. So sort of lower end of that's maybe 160 to 180. Higher ends maybe, 220 to 240,000 per coin. um, you don't want to buy at the epic highest price because then again, you'll still be up in 4 years, but who wants to wait 4 years? That's a long time. So if you're buying right now, you're probably almost guaranteed to be up within 2 or 3 years. Maybe never we never see 120,000 ever again, and you're always up. Who knows? But if you're buying at 160, 180, certainly 220, 240, you're probably going to have to spend at least a year or two underwater on your investment. Now, the problem you're probably thinking is, why don't I just wait? Why don't I wait and buy Bitcoin in the next price correction? And the answer is because we don't know when that will happen. We don't know if that will happen. And if it or when it does happen, we don't know how low the price will go. So let's assume we go to peak euphoria, which right now James Check would probably say peak euphoria is around $240,000 per coin. So we double. We double in a series of 2 to 3 months. Okay, that's crazy. First of all, that's not sustainable. It can't just like keep going, that fast all the way with no price corrections along the way. The nature of assets is they go through price corrections. If they any asset that goes up that fast is going to go through price corrections along the way, where it washes out the people that were using leverage, borrowed money, they lose their money. There's wreckage along the way, and the people who hold on, they're all fine. But let's assume we do go to 240, and you're waiting because you're thinking, hey, I'm not going to buy at 122. I'm going to wait for the next price correction. Okay, when are you going to buy it? Are you going to buy it if it goes from 240 down to 230? Is that when you're going to buy it? Because the whole 230 is way higher than 122. Are you going to wait for it to go down to 180? That's still way higher. Are you going to wait for it to drop from 240 to 140? Well, 140 is still a lot higher than 122, which you can buy it for right now. Or are you going to wait for the price to go lower than the price today in the next bear market? It might. But if so, how much? Are you going to wait until it goes down from 122 down to 118? Because you could have bought it for that like 2 days ago. Or are you going to wait to 110? I promise you, whatever price you're waiting for, the price of Bitcoin will dip to a price just above that level, and then it will go back, you know, climb back to new all-time highs above whatever the highest it gets in 2025 or 2026 is, and you will be waiting because you never bought, because you were waiting for the price to hit 110 again, and the price only ever hit 112. It happens all the time. Back in 2022, the price was dipping after going through a period of euphoria in 2021. The price was going through a brutal bear market in 2022, driven by a bunch of stupidity, a bunch of borrowed money, and ultimately Sam Bankman-Fried, who scammed a bunch of people and stole a bunch of money. And as a result, people thought, the whole crypto industry was over and it was done and all that sort of stuff. Of course, it wasn't. Bitcoin always comes back, no matter what. That's the beauty of it. But if you were waiting, there was a ton of people all over Twitter. People were like, look, in the price recovery after 2017, it went down this much percentage. And so they had all figured out the same percentage meant that Bitcoin was going to come down to between 12,800 and 13,800. So people all over Twitter are bragging about how cheap they're going to buy Bitcoin at $13,800. Well, the price dipped from $69,000 down to 15,500, which is a much bigger price correction than I would anticipate ever happening again. We live in the age of exchange traded funds. Obviously, we don't have Sam Bankman-Fried running around scamming everybody, all that sort of stuff. But it was a brutal price correction. But all the people waiting for the price to hit 13,800 did not buy at 15,500. They were all convinced they were going to get a little bit more of a discount. And now they've missed out on what? 7 times their money? So they missed out on a 700% return because they wanted it 10% cheaper, 20% cheaper, and they missed out on a 700% return. Don't play that game. People are constantly playing that game. They're constantly losing. People are constantly telling me, but it seemed expensive, so I was waiting for the price to go down. And then I was like, well, did it go down? Well, yeah. Well, did you buy it? Well, no, because I was waiting for it to go down a little more. And no matter how low the price dips, you're going to think it still might go down some more, so I better just wait a little bit more. And then you don't buy it. And then boom, there's 700% return that you didn't get. Sorry about that. You shouldn't have played that game. Don't outsmart yourself. It happens all the time. Please don't do that. So easy solution is buy as much Bitcoin as you can, hold on to it for as long as conceivably possible. It's the same strategy that's always worked for everybody that's ever done anything in Bitcoin is buy as much as you can, hold on to it as long as possible. And if you're considering buying more Bitcoin in 2025 or 2026, in my opinion, I would go ahead and do it. Go ahead and get it out of the way. Do not wait for the euphoria phase to buy Bitcoin. Because in the euphoria phase, you're going to want to buy Bitcoin really bad because it feels great, but you'll also be buying it at 150, 160, 180,000 a coin. And then you're going to be stuck going through a bear market. And none of us wants that. So please don't put yourself in that position. It's bad for you. It's bad for me. It's bad for all of us. And it's a lot better if you just buy it before the euphoria really kicks in because, it's just better for everybody that way. So anyway, I think we probably will go through a significant period of euphoria in the second half of this year, maybe even into 2026. I don't know. But the best time to buy Bitcoin is before that euphoria so that you're not stuck trying to guess whether you're buying it at the super expensive top It's better to just buy it before the euphoria happens. It just makes life easier for you, makes it easier for me, and all around everything's better. And that way you can ride through the euphoria feeling great. But when the price corrects, you're like, I don't care. You know, the price drops from 180 down to 140. You're like, I don't care. I bought it at 120, so it doesn't matter. A lot better to be in that position than to be buying it all the way up into and through the peak of euphoria. Everybody ends up doing that, and it's just not fun when the price correction comes and then you're stuck being down on your investment for a year or something like that. And you could have avoided all of that by not waiting for the euphoria to buy. As always, hope it's all helpful. I'm here for anything you need. Message me if I can be of assistance. Have a great day, everyone.